What's up, everybody? And today we're talking about Nyaight of the Living Dead. So basically, this show or this anime is about an apocalypse, but instead of zombies, it is cats. So if you get nuzzled and licked and rubbed up against by cats, you essentially turn into a cat. I saw a trailer or something for this anime like a while ago, and I never ended up watching it. And I was like, oh, what should I do for the next video? And then I was like, it popped in my head. I was like, oh, let me watch the first two episodes and see how I feel about the show. It was an interesting premise for the first two episodes, but it's not something personally that I'm like, oh man, I gotta watch the rest of the season. I think the biggest issue is that the second episode kind of heavily hinted at like something that's going on, and I was like, oh, okay, I kind of wish this was something you would have left for, a surprise, but you kind of like already gave the, thing away. Basically, the idea is a zombie apocalypse with cats, right? And so it is this level of like seriousness of like, okay, you're getting all this stuff from zombie movies, like, oh my god, I twisted my ankle, you guys gonna have to leave me behind, or like, he's gone, damn it, like I told you, like he's not around anymore, like, all of the like seriousness you would get for something like The Walking Dead or whatever. But then you're getting this silliness of like, it is them being chased by like a herd of cats. It is like, all right, come and get me, you sons of bitches. Like, and it is just a bunch of cats just like, laying on a guy, and then he turns into a cat.
Hurry up and get this over with, you cute freaks!
But there is something like low-key scary about it because, in a zombie apocalypse, right, assuming that there was an antidote sooner than later, then you can see someone like turning into a zombie and then like unturning into a zombie unless they've been a zombie for like too long. But there is something like kind of scary about someone like anamorphing into a cat, because then it's like, well, then you have to figure out how do you uncat a person, you know what I'm saying? So in my mind, there is a level of more like this person could potentially be gone forever because like they just transformed into a cat. Like, what are we gonna do with that? Granted, it is an anime, you know what I'm saying? So they could just like undo it. But I'm trying to think of like in a realistic sense. So like if cats were running around turning people into cats and they just kind of like transformed into a cat, it's just kind of like, how the hell are we going to figure that out? You know what I'm talking about? So there is something that feels a little more permanent to all of this, but there is something a little more, because it's cats, so it is silly just to see a bunch of cats, like lick a guy, and then he's like, I'm infected. And then, he's doing cat-like behaviors and then turns into a cat. So this show kind of, tries to do this balancing act, and it kind of works, but obviously the premise is way more, silly than it is scary, quote unquote. But I think when you look at like the kind of like logical sense of like everything that was going down, it's kind of like, oh, it is kind of crazy how fast everyone would turn into a cat, because like you see a bunch of cats, and if they're like, oh hey, I feel like most people are like, oh hey little kitten, and then before you know it, you're a cat, and then it just keeps spreading from there. So I was like, oh yeah, I feel like it would definitely spread way faster than a zombie apocalypse, because zombies pretty, I feel like a lot of zombie media, people don't know what zombies are in the actual like show or movie, where it's like, oh, you see a cat, I'm saying, whatever, but then before you know it, everyone's cats, and you're like, oh crap, I don't want to be a cat. And then you're running from a mob of cats, and they're way faster than we are. So it's like, it is kind of low-key scary but you have to like think about it. I think watching it is the problem of like, oh, it doesn't look too scary, but in retrospect, it kind of is really scary. I think the issue is that with the show is, I mean, again, I only watched the first two episodes, but like, there's only really two characters to kind of follow, and one's just kind of like a generic girl, and it's like, all right. And then the other dude, we find him, and he has no memories. And it is like, oh, like, who am I? What's going on? Blah, blah, blah. And then, like I was saying, in the second episode, they kind of dropped this, like, huge hint of, like, what's actually going on.
Occasionally, I feel things. My five senses sharpening like a cat on the hunt. Or my heart beating similarly to a cat's purr. My body moves before I have a chance to think. Like I was a cat in a previous life. Or like I still am. on the inside.
And so with that kind of leading into what I assume is going to happen, it's like, okay, I guess the interesting thing is like, how did we get here? But I think it would have hit harder if you got into the end and it was kind of like, whoa, okay. Because I mean, the basic premise of how this is all going down is like some lab was, yeah, doing genetics or whatever on a cat, and it ended up getting out, and they didn't know that it had some sort of disease, and then, it touched somebody, and then they became a cat. And we even see in one of the episodes, like, this guy randomly turns into a cat, and then the regular cats, like, go near him, and they all get all, like, I don't know. They kind of look like they like shake for a second, and now you can tell like they have the virus, and now regular cats can turn other people into cats. So you can see how it kind of spreads. And it was like, all right, cool, but again, there wasn't enough in these first two episodes for me to be like, oh, I can't wait to see more, because it is just like a classic zombie story, but with cats. So I guess the real draw of the show is like, how do they solve this, and what's going on with the main character, since he has no memories, and he's like, I feel internally like a cat, and it's just kind of like, all right, you're probably a cat, or something like that got turned into a human or something like that. But yeah, between the first two episodes, there wasn't a central thing that was grabbing me to be like, all right, let me finish this season. And then even then, I was thinking of like, I don't think you could really like spread. You can't like Walking Dead and be like, yeah, let's give me 5 seasons of this like this premise. Especially because like with zombies, I think the added bonus you have is like they don't move that fast for the most part. Granted, there's different types of zombies, but like for the general zombies, right? They could just kind of like shamble, and so you can get away with like, all right, we can run over here or whatever. But like when you're doing it with cats, it's like cats are so fast. And even from the beginning of this episode, there's they're always hanging out in like a giant like army of cats. There's like a whole herd of them. So I just don't know how you can do it that long. But again, there was nothing in these first two episodes that made me seem like, oh, I want to know how this all started. It's like, all right, cool. You mess with the cat genetically, and then everyone starts turning into cats. Shenanigans ensues. But I just don't think that the shenanigans that they gave us was enough to be like, ooh, let me get a whole season of this. It just feels like this should have been like, kind of like a movie. I think, give it like a good hour and a half or something. Tell me a decent story, you're in, you're out. So yeah, I just personally didn't feel like the first two episodes were something I was like, whoa, I gotta see more of this. It was a fun little premise, but wasn't really anything to write home about. So if you have seen this anime, let me know if if it's one of those things of like, no, dude, you got to get to like episode 5, and that's when everything turns around. But other than that, yeah, I don't think I can really recommend this anime unless you're looking for like some dumb fun thing to like put on in the background. It's a cool idea, but I just don't think it really has any like sticking power to it. So let me know in the comments down below if you're gonna check this out, if you did watch it, again, if this does get better, or if it is just kind of like whatever. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and until next time, peace.